Hello and welcome back to the probe. This is the third episode. In this episode, we have the following expectations. We have the following objectives. The first one is to know the three factors essential to news, and then the second objective is to know the elements of news. The third objective is to know the traits of a reporter, just like you, and then the fourth objective is to know different sources of campus news, and then the fifth objective is to know the requirements of good news gathering. So first among our topics in this episode are the factors that are essential to news. There are three factors that are essential to news, which are facts, the interest, and of course the readers. The news, the basis of news, every single news must be fact. The task of the reporter is to make these facts interesting to the particular readers for whom that particular writer is writing. Kailangan, if you are a student writer, if you're a campus writer, you should think about your student readers. Okay, so since you are working within a school, make sure that that community inside that particular school are always in your mind when you're writing an article for them. Ayun. So the news must be factual. It must be based upon all actual happenings, all actual situations, and all actual thoughts and actual ideas. Kailangan totoo sila. Okay? Hindi tayo nanghuhula, hindi tayo nagme-makeup ng kahit na anong mga pangyayaring hindi naman nangyari. So news must be factual. News as well must be interesting. The degree and breadth of interest vary. One story may have a high degree of interest for only a very small number of readers, okay, while another story may have a great degree of interest for a large number of readers. Say, for instance, intramurals may be something that will interest a lot of students, pero if you are only going to write about a news story about Quiz B, okay, medyo konti lang yung mga interested doon kasi lalo na maliitan lang kasi isang event lang ang Quiz B. So compare mo yun sa intramurals na mayroong basketball, merong volleyball, merong iba pang mga ball games, iba pang mga events like badminton, may chess, which is, this whole array of different sports events. So, yeah, mas interested ang mga tao tungkol sa mga yon. So, yeah, sports, that is actually, yun yung, may ganung theme ng mga news. And so, when we talk about sports news, I said, it's just the type of the news. Okay, although it has its own lingo. Okay, so how about we talk about actual news? Sige, kung yung mga hindi sports. Halimbawa, between a news article about the tuition fee hike and another news article that's about the winning of a particular group of people from a section in a quiz bee event, do you think is more interesting for more readers? Siyempre, yung tuition fee hike. Okay, between halimbawa yung tuition fee hike and between halimbawa yung same event, yung quiz bee event na involved lang ang mga estudyante, selected estudyante para sa isang science quiz bee. Between the winners in that event of a science quiz bee in your school and the changing of the overall class program na mag-start sana ng 8 tas ginawang 7. Okay? So yung news about the quiz bee event and the news about the changing of the start of the class program from 8 to 7 a.m., which do you think is more interesting? Of course, that news article about the changing of the class program from 8 a.m. to 7 a.m. because that affects a lot of students and perhaps it's also going to be interesting for more types of students. Ayun. So a number of elements help make facts interesting to people. So how are you going to make facts interesting to people? So you just have to think about the following elements. The first one is immediacy or timeliness. So a reporter must stress, the latest angle of a news story. The words today and tomorrow characterize the most newsworthy words in the lead of a news story. Occasionally, a story happens in the recent past. So in this case, yung reporter dapat mag-seek siya for a today angle of the event. Halimbawa, may nangyari kahapon na news story, tapos ngayon pa lang susulat ng today pa lang magsusulat si news reporter ng news about that. kailangan maghanap si reporter ng isang anggulo ng news story kahapon that is still lingering today. So however, since most events actually happened or witnessed before the paper is issued, it is necessary to depend rather heavily on the less time-bound element if the story is to be of interest to a large number of students. Ayun. So, for example, if a school head, halimbawa, meron tayong mga school heads, diba? So, a school head can be a principal or an OIC principal. If that school head resigns on November 5, we can't expect readers na maging interested pa in that fact on December 10. So, when the next issue of the paper comes out, kasi kung halimbawa, December 10 pa lang lalabas yung paper ninyo, huwag nating expect na interesting pa yung news article na yun about the resignation of your school head on November 5. And the reporter must find something about the school administrator's resignation of his new plans. Yun yung mga bago niyang plans that will be timely or the new students and therefore it will become news. The reporter must dig out some point of interest with regards to the school administrator's resignation because the resignation itself has already happened and it is no longer very, very interesting. So the reporter must then dig out na lang some more things about the resignation, other angles about the resignation na tingin niya is interesting para sa mga katulad niya estudyante. Ayan. For the second element, I think you are hearing a chicken. Okay, so for the second element, it's proximity or timeliness. So this element refers not only dun sa geographic nearness. Okay? Halimbawa, merong news article na nangyari sa kabilang school na that's a school near you, pero it doesn't really concern you kasi ibang group yun di ba? Ibang community yun. But not only that, okay, it also refers to proximity and timeliness also refers to interest nearness. So a graduate of your school who makes it to the editorial staff ng New York Times halimbawa, in the United States, balita yon para sa inyong campus paper. So a reporter must emphasize a local or school angle of a news story whenever possible. Yung campus paper should restrict stories para sa mga school activities, para sa mga students, faculty, and other school personnel, and to those community, city, and provincial, regional, or national events which somehow affect the students or the teachers. Say, for instance, the changing of learning delivery modalities na nangyari nationwide. So, may mga nag-modular, merong mga nag-online, merong mga nag-radio-based and TV-based instruction. That, my friend, is news. So, how are you going to localize that? The campus reporter for a particular school then can localize that by emphasizing kung ano yung ginagawa nila sa school. Kung nagmo-modular ba sila, nag-online ba sila, nag-TV ba sila, or RBI. So, ganun niya pwedeng i-localize yun. It's a national news, pero it affects them, and how did it affect them? O pwede niya sabihin yun in that news. The third element is consequence. So this element refers to the importance or breadth of appeal. A story that affects every student in the school will have more reader interest than one affecting only members of one class. Okay, kung yung news stories only concerning or affected lang ang special science class ng isang napakalaking school, baka hindi siya gaanong interesting for everyone or for a greater number of readers. So the reporter must emphasize the angle of that story na interesting para sa mga mas maraming mga readers. So occasionally, he will need to interpret the significance of a story para sa mga readers niya. Kasi yung mga readers natin, minsan, syempre, tamad na silang mag-isip, okay? And you are expected to give them all, even the explanation. So you may have to go the extra mile and interpret that particular news article for them. Ganon, okay? For example, what will the decision of the education secretary to add one more academic year in the high school mean for the students of your school? Ngayon, halimbawa, kung 1 year lang yan, dinadagdag nila dati, tas naging 2 years, o what if kaya ngayon, ginawa siyang 3 years? How do you think that news article will affect the students in your school, the teachers, the administration? So, also, halimbawa, balita, nagbago yung grading system. Okay, dati, nung regular na school, ang grading system, meron tayong written work, meron kino-consider na performance task, at saka quarterly exams. Pero nung nagkaroon ng pandemic, nagkaroon ng distance education, ginawa na lang siyang written work at saka performance task. Wala ng quarter exam. So, what do you think is the implication of that for the students? The implication of that for the parents, for the teachers, for the administrators, if any. Yun. So, we have to be able to add that element of consequence in our news article. The third one is prominence. This element includes persons, places, things, and situations known to the public by reason of wealth, social position, achievement, or previous publicity. Pero sana yung mga good types of publicity, pwedeng ganun. Okay. Always include names of persons, yung mga pangalan ng tao, especially those that are well known. In your news story, for names make news. The more prominent a particular name, place, event, or situation, the more interesting it will be in a story. Yung mga pinaka-familiar na mga mga applications ngayon na mayroon tayo, Discord, or if you put the word Discord in your article or even in your headline, TikTok, ayan, pwede mo ilagay yan, Food Panda, Shopee, Lazada, even the names of those inanimate things, mga applications lang sila. They can add that kind of the degree of prominence in your news article. So if they are if they are really mentioned, mention them. Kaso wag mo silang ipilit, okay? Kasi baka wala naman silang connection talaga dun sa the news article. Nilagay mo lang to catch the reader's attention, okay? So make sure that you are wise when it comes to using these kinds of prominent names. Okay? And then the next element is drama. Okay? We are natural storytellers and we are also natural story listeners. This element adds vitality and color to a news story. A reporter must try as much as possible na hanapin yung dramatic action tsaka yung napakagandang background ng isang storya. Yung halimbawa, yung pagka-mysterious, yung suspense, at saka yung mga nakakatawang part ng isang storya. Yung may pagka-comedy. Those are chief characteristics of drama, and perhaps if there is a drama in your news story, you may want to include that. You may want to emphasize that. And then the next element is oddity or unusualness. Itong element naman na to, it always helps to make facts interesting para sa mga tao. Yung pagiging kakaiba or yung oddity nga ng isang pangyayari, the greater that oddity is, okay, the greater the unusualness of a story is, the greater is its value as a news. So if that story indeed is odd, use that to your advantage. And then the next one, this is quite related to drama, conflict. So this element is one of the most basic of all news elements. Kailangan ma-clarify dun sa iyong, kung meron mang conflict ka, okay? Pero usually may mga ganyan naman talaga, conflict. You have to clarify what kind of conflict, physical or mental conflict, is present. Halimbawa, if it was against two students running for presidency, you can put that as like man versus man. Okay, pero feeling ko wala naman nangyayaring man versus animals sa campus, no? Wala naman siguro. Okay, pero halimbawa if it seems like it's the students versus the spread of the virus, or the students versus the extension of the school year. Okay, so that is like man versus nature, not really nature. Nature, yung pandemic. And man versus society, pwede rin ganun kasi yung pag-extend ng school year, maybe something you can charge sa mga people who are behind the Department of Education. Ayun, you can like emphasize that conflict in your news article. And then the next one is emotions and instincts. Itong mga elements na to, they involve the desire halimbawa ng isang tao. So halimbawa, yung pagkain, okay? You can talk in your news about a particular cooking competition in your school na nangyari in your school. Tapos yung mga bagong in-invent nila ng mga pagkain, pwedeng gano'n. Bawal, pwedeng nagpa-event po pala ang science department ng school ninyo. Ang ginawa nilang isa sa mga events is mag-imbento ng pagkain na masarap, at the same time masustansya. O pwede mong gawin na pinaka-topic mo, defining element ng news mo, yung pagkain na inimbento. Diba? You can start with that. Also, you can put clothing or shelter, yung mga desires, yung mga instincts natin. The universal interest in children and animals, that's also one kind of emotion arousing and, interesting things. Fear, yung sympathy, yung general jealousy, generosity in human affairs, those are also parts of human emotions and instincts. So the public enjoys kasi having its emotions appealed to through the press. So you may use that to your advantage. And then the last element is progress. So ito namang element na to, ang involved dito ay yung significant change for the betterment of mankind. Okay, it may refer to one achievement in the laboratory or kung meron man kayong observatory sa school. Kasi may mga schools na may observatory sa rooftop, parang nandun yung mga telescopes nila, di ba? Ayun, so pwede silang may mga council meetings, at kung ano may napag-usapan nila sa council meeting that affects everyone. Okay, but in a very good way, you can report that as a progress. So yeah, it may also refer to the construction of a new building. Yung kung school ninyo, meron siyang pinapagawang bagong building, kasi sa amin may bago kami high school building yan, okay, as of recording. You can put that as part of your, as a defining element in your news article. Yun. So the reporter must develop a nose for news. This nose for news is kind of a curiosity about people, what they do, at kung ano yung mga bagay na that makes these people act the way they do. As a student reporter, you must start to think of everything that happens in school in terms of a possible story for your paper. Kailangan mo rin as well i-report yan sa yung editor. Okay? I-report mo lahat ng mga possible stories sa editor mo, because this way, you will be able to develop your nose for news. And I know that medyo humaba yung discussion natin about the factors essential to news, pero I hope that you keep them always in your minds. Okay, so for the next part of this session, we have to discuss how news can be best gathered. Okay, so a good news reporter must have the following traits. Kailangan intense yung interest mo in all kinds of people, and that you also have an intense interest in talking to them. We work with people as campus journalists. We need to work with people. We need to interview so many different kinds of people. If hindi tayo confident sa pag-converse with them, mahirapan tayong kumuha ng mga information from them. So also, we also have to have a very good ability to speak and write. Kung halimbawa yung campus paper mo is using English, kailangan you're good in English or any other, halimbawa kung Filipino, edi Filipino. Kasi basta kung ano yung paper, ano yung language ng paper ninyo, dapat you're fluent in speaking and writing that language. No. And then you also have to be resourceful and persevering. When a story, specifically, there are stories that are quite difficult to obtain yung mga details. So dapat you're resourceful, hindi ka agad nag-give up. Also, kailangan you have a good sense of responsibility and punctuality. Kailangan alam mo yung assignments mo at tatapusin mo sila on time. Okay. Also, you have to be willing to respect the confidences. You also have to be capable of considering requests and keeping the promises that you gave to whoever it is that you got the news story from. You have to do that. Dapat, since they entrusted you with some information, you are going to write that information the way you told them about. Okay? Wag yung biglang ma-offend sila dun sa i-release mong news article. Okay? You have to let them know why you are interviewing them and why you need those information. Okay? Okay, so also you have to read very extensively with a very wide so that your vocabulary will also be developed. Okay, so aside from these, siguro idadagdag na lang natin. You have to work quickly and accurately. Okay, ang balita, sinasabi nga natin, mainit. Pwedeng lumabas yan talaga na mainit. So, kailangan kapag sinerve mo siya, mainit-init pa siya, hindi yung cold na siya or meron na siyang mold. You have to work quickly, write quickly, and accurately. Kailangan, nagmamadali ka, pero that is not reason for you to just write whatever you want to write. Okay? Also, you have to hold judgment until all the facts are known. Okay, I'm going back there because I would like to emphasize that you have to have a realization that there are always two sides in every story. Okay, huwag kang magsusulat ng isang news article na pumapanig lang or parang pinapakita niya na napakasama nito or napakabait nito, napakabuti nito para sa mga tao without really considering all sides present. Okay, so those are the things that you need to have, okay, being a reporter, being a news reporter. Okay, now you know the traits, you know the elements of a good news story. Now, where did you get those stories? Okay, so the next part is itong mga sources ng campus news. Okay, so you can get them from your beats. Beats are people, so they can be the principal, teachers, coaches, okay, students, the school, parent, teacher association, public officials, mga alumni, or any other persons such as, sige, dagdag natin yung mga barangay officials kasi sila mas close instead of public officials. Or pwede rin nating sabihin mga community or mga civic organizations na, nakaka-apekto rin in a way sa ating schools. Pwede ka rin mag-refer sa date book or sa future book where you see all of the coming activities of your campus. In the Department of Education, nagre-release siya usually ng school calendar through a memo. So if you want to access that information, it's really easy now because you don't even need future books or date books because not all schools have them. But all schools under the Department of Education have access to the school calendar because they are implementing the school calendar. Ayun. And then, school handbook or student handbook, it can also be a source of news kasi there are schools that are updating their student handbook every year or siguro every 3 years or in an interval, a specific interval of years. Also, mga publicity releases ng school. May mga schools na merong sariling publication ng kanilang faculty. Merong mga schools na may sariling publication. Halimbawa, sa aming school, meron akong sariling publication being the school-based monitoring, evaluation, and adjustments or SMEA coordinator. I have my own publication. So those can be sources of campus news naman for the student publication. Yun. Okay, so keep in mind that you can get news articles from these people. Kumustahin mo lang sila. And then just ask them anong ganap sa school, ano yung mga dapat nating abangan, ayun. So that you get a news article. You get the topic for your news article. Ayan. And then, we have the following. I think this is the last part of our session. Yeah. So how do we conduct news gathering, or what are the things that we need to remember? What are the requirements of good news gathering? Okay, so for you to be able to successfully gather news, you have to understand the story you're about to cover before you cover it. So you have to look up related stories. Halimbawa, yung mga previous results ng student council elections. Okay, pwede mong gawin yon. If you're covering the results, okay, kailangan mong sigurong i-review kung ano yung mga results last year so that you'll be able to do comparison. Also, kailangan you identify who to interview. Alam mo kung sino talaga yung specific na taong interviewin mo. Tapos i-consult mo sila, okay? What do you mean about consultation? So go to their office or call them perhaps through secretaries ganun, and let them know about your intention of interviewing them and let them know to ask them to if that is okay lang with them. Okay? Specify niyo. And then also, you have to plan your questions ahead. When you plan your questions ahead, you can use the 5 Ws and an age model. Tapos pwede ka na lang mag-add ng mga follow-up questions. Kasi if you have these questions planned na, it is better ensuring kung ano yung it is better ensuring that you would be able to cover all of the things that you want to cover about that particular news. Mas mababa yung tendency, impossibility na meron ka pang ma-miss, lalo na kung nakasulat naman, naka-write down na yung mga kailangan mong itanong. And kung halimbawa, you would like to extend further some conversation about a particular answer that they gave you, you can do that na lang nun. Okay? Pero sure na makakover mo lahat na dapat makover. Okay, now, the things that you need to remember when you are interviewing a person is that they are people. So you have to make appointments in advance. Hindi sila mga robot na walang na mga tawag doon na automatic na magre-respond sa iyo whenever you want them to respond. These are people who have many different affiliations and many different businesses. So make sure that you make your appointments in advance. When you do appointments over the phone or through chat, you have to state your identity, your task as a writer for a paper. Kailangan mo ipakilala din yung paper kung saan ka nag-work. And if they recognize it to be the campus paper, that would be better. Okay, kailangan mo rin i-clarify kung ano yung purpose mo in doing the interview. Kailangan mo rin i-clarify kung kailan nyo plan. Kung sakaling pumayag siya, okay? Kung kailan kayo pwede mag-usap, at kung anong oras, at kung saan. Okay, kung halimbawa, done over the phone lang, okay, bali, that's better. Kasi, lalo na in this case na meron tayong pandemic na kinakaharap. Okay, so, we can't really meet a lot of people in person, physically. Yeah. So, also, whenever you make these appointments in advance, make sure that you repeat your agreements before hanging up. What do you mean about agreements? Yung agreed time, agreed date, and agreed venue or channel of communication, you have to repeat them to the person you're scheduling that interview with. Okay, to that interviewee, to the interviewee himself or herself or themselves, before you hang up, and you have to be very polite, okay, throughout the process. So also, you have to know how to conduct interviews. Like, oh my God, kailangan alam ninyo kung paano kayo makipag-usap. Kasi perhaps, baka tatanungin nyo dito, teacher, okay, kailangan alam mo kung paano kausapin ng isang teacher. Also, kung paano makipag-usap sa makipag-usap sa mga student officials, sa officials ng student body, I mean. You also have to know how to talk to public officials, talk to your principal, how to talk to your fellow students. Mas matanda man siya or hindi. To one athlete, to a coach, you have to know how to talk to them. Okay, you have to begin by pronouncing their names correctly. If you are not confident about that, you can actually try asking them how would they like to be called, kanon. And if they tell you kung ano yung gusto lang ipantawag sa kanila, that would be better. You also have to be punctual. Remember that you guys had an agreement on what time to begin. Okay, you have to be punctual. As I've said kanina, introduce yourself in the actual interview. You have to be courteous. You have to be polite. Tapos when they're talking, do not interrupt them. Also, give them your full attention. Okay, earphones you can use them in recording, pero also that has to have permission from the person you're interviewing. Okay, if they are okay with the recorder set, you have to just kasi interviewing people now becomes easier because you have recorders. Okay, pwede mo siyang i-record, pero it has to have their attention. I mean their permission. So that when they're talking, hindi ka constantly tumitingin sa phone mo, hindi ka gaanong naka-bury sa phone mo. You don't also interrupt them by saying some remarks na masyadong mahaba. Just let them talk, okay? Ayan. Tapos do not ask them or avoid asking just yes or no questions. You have to make sure that your questions are crafted in a way that encourages your interviewee to share more and to do most of the talking. Okay? Kailangan hindi yung tanong mo lang tapos yes lang yung no, yung mga sagot niya. Yes, no, maybe, of course, certainly, never. alam mo yun, ba't pa kayo nag-interview? O mag-ano na lang kayo, sana nagpa-questionnaire ka na lang pala. Okay, so you have to make sure that the kind of questions that you're asking is worth all the bother, worth all of the istorbo na nangyari. Okay, so and apart from those, do not let the interview wander off. Halimbawa, meron ng sinasabing medyo kakaiba si interviewee, pagkatapos na niyang nagsalita or siguro before pa maging deep into that kind of topic yung pinag-uusapan, pwede mo siyang i-segue pabalik dun sa talagang pinag-uusapan ninyo because you can't expect everyone to be okay with spending that much time wandering off topic, not really not really reaching the goal of the interview. So you have to prompt the interviewee further kung sakali man na actually you have to prompt the interview to perhaps go back to the topic when you're wandering off a lot. I mean too much. But if you think the interviewee is wandering off towards the topic na interesting din naman, it's equally interesting with the actual topic that you have at hand, you can prompt them too by letting them push through with that point. Okay, you have to do that through intelligent questioning. Tapos huwag kang magtatanong ng mga questions na masyadong personal. Baka tinatanong mo na ilang taon gulang na yung anak niya, tapos anong pangalan ng anak niya, kung kumusta sila ng asawa niya, masyadong yun. Okay, do not ask them, especially if you're talking to a teacher and napaka off topic din naman ng mga question. Halimbawa, you're just asking the teacher about their plans in the MAPE department for the intramurals, or why are you going to ask about the child of that MAPE teacher? There's no need for that, right? So ayun. Also, let me repeat, when you take notes, you have to make sure that it doesn't get in the way of your communication with your interviewee. And when you're about to leave, and you did not use a recorder, you were just jotting down your notes, you have to confirm them with your interviewee before leaving. And if there are some requests about, halimbawa, kung paano siya sana maisulat, kung paano siya mai-cite dun sa actual article, you have to evaluate them carefully and you have to consider them. Because, they put their trust on you with those pieces of information. So you also have to guarantee that whatever information they gave you, they're safe. And that ends the requirements to news gathering, and that also concludes the probe. In this episode of the probe, the third episode, you were able we were able to do discussions regarding the following. You were able to know the 3 factors essential to news, elements of news, the traits of a reporter, the different sources of campus news, and the requirements of good news gathering. So this is Sir CJ, and I hope that you learned something in this version of the probe. Please make sure that you do the assessment that is found in the description down below. Okay, so make sure that you do the assessment so that I would be able to help you further. This is the probe of the knowledge catalog.